Hello, my name is Dijana Ihas, and I will be presenting a study titled He Knew That We Are All Different, Teaching Practices of Expert Music Teachers in Higher Education. I'm Associate Professor at Pacific University in Oregon, United States of America, and here's my email in case that you would like to contact me. Overview, I'll be talking about need for the study, review of literature, purpose, research questions, methods, results, discussion, references, and questions and answers that I hope to receive from you. Need for the study, I will leave you 20 seconds to read it on your own. So basically, although the tradition of transferring knowledge from one generation of musicians to another happens in a very close one-on-one teaching, which in the United States we call applied lessons. In Europe it might be called private lessons. We still know very little about exactly what teachers are doing during their time with students, particularly what expert teachers are doing. Review of literature, I reviewed about 30 studies divided out of music and within music, as well as I read a couple of books on expertise teaching, as well as expertise in performance. The two studies that are of particular interest to this study are out of music Schulman 1987, in which he stated 7 different types of knowledge that teachers have. And in Music World, it's Abel study from 1975, in which he stated that there are 5 competencies that applied instructors are exhibiting. As you can see, although Abel's is using different wording, they are actually parallel. So for example, content knowledge would be general pedagogical knowledge would be general instructional competency. Curriculum knowledge would be instructional systemization. Content knowledge would be musical knowledge. Pedagogical content knowledge would be instructional skills. And then knowledge of learners and their characteristics would be rapport. Interestingly enough, in Abel's, we do not have these 2 types of knowledge of educational context and knowledge of educational ends. Purpose. The purpose of this phenomenological study is to identify and describe teaching behaviors of expert music teachers in applied music lesson settings through retroactive perceptions of their students. In other words, I did not interview and I did not observe the works of these particular expert teachers. I talked to their students, and that's how I'm trying to discern their pedagogical and teaching practices. Here's the picture that depicts how that applied lessons may look like. Operational definition of expert teacher I'm using is expert teacher is someone who has proficiency in combining the subject content of what he or she teaches with the needs of his or her pupils. And that's from Bran 2006. Research questions. What are the teaching practices of expert applied lessons music teachers in higher education? How does musical upbringing inform development of expert music teachers in higher education? What are the perceived characteristics of expert applied lessons music teachers in higher education? Research methods. I used a phenomenological research design, more specifically transcendental phenomenological design that is described by Mustaka 1994. Transcendental phenomenology emphasizes subjectivity and discovery of the essences of experience and provides a systematic and disciplined methodology for the derivation of knowledge. That is from philosopher Husserl, who is very often credited for the inception of phenomenological research. 7 steps for conducting this, apologize about that, phenomenological study as described by Creswell and Poth. Identifying the phenomena, which in this case is teaching practices of expert teachers in music. Identifying philosophical assumptions. The philosophical background is social constructivism as well as bracketing out, as I'll explain later. Who are the individuals that I interviewed are 8 eminent violin teachers who studied with expert teachers. Data analysis, I use horizontation and clusters of meaning, which is very typical of phenomenological studies. And that is basically where I am now. I just started developing textual and structural descriptions. I have significant statements and descriptions of contexts. And my next two steps are going to be report the essence of the phenomenon using composite description and presenting the understanding in written form. With phenomenological research, it's very important to be familiar with the concept of epoch, which in Greek word means, so I will give you 20 seconds to read. In other words, in phenomenological research, it is really important to bracket yourself out of the experience. So my bracket statement could look something like this. I was privileged to study with many expert music teachers. While working on this study, I put my learning experiences aside as much as possible so that I can approach this study with a fresh mind. Who were the participants? As I said, I interviewed 8 highly respected violin teachers and performers who studied with some really big names in the history of violin pedagogy. You may recognize some names: Jascha Heifetz, Joseph Gingold, Paul Makanovitsky, Shinichi Suzuki, Keito Havash, Ivan Galamian, Joseph Gingold, and Dorothy DeLay. Here are how many years they studied with them, as well as where participants are teaching now. R1 stands for Research 1 University, that would be top universities in the United States. R2 also pretty high, Liberal Arts College and European Music Conservatory. This is one European person that I had the privilege to interview. The primary sources were 8 interviews. It was one-shot interviews. I had the opportunity to interview them only one time from 8 participants. So it's about 8 hours of interview materials that were transcribed and so on. As a secondary sources that I use for triangulation, I did lots of reading and comparison of past expertise teachers' pedagogies through reading related books and articles, as well as I watched videos of these teachers that are available on YouTube, and I could triangulate with the results of the interview and see the reality of their teaching. Results. For research question 1, which was, what are the teaching practices of expert applied lessons music teaching in higher education? I was able to come up with a code that is modes of teaching. Expert music teachers in higher education engage in systematic and regimented modes of teaching. And then I have illustrated quote. Types of knowledge, they engage in really wide variety of knowledges, which will be understanding of content knowledge, curriculum knowledge, knowledge of learners, and pedagogical content knowledge, with pedagogical content knowledge being the most represented. The most used in higher education with pedagogical content knowledge. And here are the quotes that you can come back after you hear my presentation and maybe read. For research question 2, which was concerned about upbringing and how musical upbringing informs development of expert teachers. Expert music teachers tend to produce new generations of expert teachers. Teaching practices of expert music teachers are transmitted through the mechanisms of application and modification. Expert teachers inspire scholarly productivity in their students. Research question 3, which was concerned with what are the perceived characteristics of expert music teachers in higher education. They exhibit emotional characteristics of warmth, but they are not always readily available. There's always this distance between students and teachers because these teachers are considered to be these big names and we are not supposed to approach them as a normal human beings. Expert teachers tend to be strict and have extremely high expectations of their students. Sorry about that. And they treat students with a high level of respect, which elicits respect from their students. Discussion. Expert music teachers in higher education utilize a wide range of categories of knowledge and expertise, which is in accord with many other studies on expert teachers. Most prominent teaching type of knowledge is pedagogical content knowledge that Schulman described as the blending of sound subject knowledge together with an understanding of pedagogy. One thread through all interviews was that expert music teachers in music emphasize the individuality. Interestingly, out of 7 Schulman's categories of expert teachers' knowledge, this study found no evidence of expert music teachers engaging in 2 types of knowledge. That would be knowledge of educational contexts and knowledge of educational ends. Limitations. As every other study, this study has lots of limitations. It was a retrospective study, so I was not really observing and interviewing people who are now considered to be expert teachers, but students of these expert teachers. Study only focuses on applied lessons expert teachers and only on violin teachers, so no other context of music teaching. Most of these people are teaching at the conservatory level, meaning that if I'm interviewing students of teachers from other universities, maybe results will be different. And also I'm going to keep working on validity reliability in terms of making thicker triangulation. Future research, there's a need for current expert teachers and examining their research practices, expert music teachers in varied contexts, meaning in group lessons, in lecture type of lessons, and so on, as well as examining student perspectives. Here is a short, very abbreviated list of references. Thank you for your attention, and thank you for questions that I hope to receive from you. With this, I am going to stop this recording and wish you a wonderful day.